All right, well, let's get started. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the STCR's Lunch and Learn training session. My name is Nicola Hill, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at STCR. So I'm pleased to be joined by Jen, one of our technical support specialists. So let me just give you a little background for those who don't know that STCR, we're proudly supported the technical needs of grocers for over 57 years now. And we believe that continuous training is really crucial for achieving the ROI targets you have set for your POS systems. That's why we've created these monthly webinar series designed to provide ongoing training on key aspects of SMS solutions. These sessions occur at the end of each month and cover a wide range of topics related to SMS. So today, what are we focusing on? We're focusing on inventory best practices. So please feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A section in Zoom, and we'll address them after the training. This session is being recorded, and all webinars will be available for viewing afterwards on the YouTube channel. So now I'm going to pass it over to Jen to begin the training. Jen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nicola. As Nicola stated, today's webinar, we are going to be focusing on inventory best practices. If you have been watching the webinars for a little while, this is a topic that we did cover back in July of 2023. When we were going over that, I was focusing mostly on utilizing what we call the V3 or SMS and the PDA module for doing your inventory tracking. Today's webinar, I'm going to be focusing on using Thriversa, which is the new application that Lock is coming out with that layers over SMS. If you're unfamiliar with this has been rebranded. This was something that we generally refer to as eSuite. They have renamed it into Thriversa. So it is the same exact thing, just a new name, but it is a new application that is layering over the existing SMS and SMS Pro. And the idea is for eventually everything to be brought over into this and take over all the functionality that you currently have in SMS and SMS Pro and utilize this with some more functionality as well. So that's why I wanted to bring this into the Thriversa application so you can see the additional functionalities and how to do the functionalities that we've already gone over previously in this new application. So to start with, really with inventory with SMS, there is two main ways to do inventory. There is what we call perpetual inventory and periodic inventory. So periodic inventory is if you're just going to be doing inventory counts on a periodic basis. So if you're doing a monthly inventory, a yearly inventory, a quarterly inventory, whatever time period you specify, you would just go out, do an inventory count, and then you're not tracking really what's coming in and out of the stores. So it's just something that way you can know what you have on hand at that specific moment in time. Perpetual inventory is the running count. So this is as you sell items, inventory is being taken out. And as you're receiving in items, inventory is being brought in. So you're adding to that number and subtracting that from that number on a constant basis. And you know what you have on hand at any given moment. The first best practice is if you're doing either types of these inventory is to make sure that your items have cost records. So I'm going to go into the inventory in the item maintenance in Thriversa. So it's over here. If you're unfamiliar with this application, I did do a few webinars just going through some basic usage earlier this year, but over here is how you navigate. So under items, we're just going to go under items masters and go into the cost. And I'm just going to be bringing up all of the items so you can search you can search for specific items, you can search by vendor, description, you can sub-department, there's a lot of criteria. I'm just going to bring up all the items just so you can see the cost records and why they're important. So the reason why you need to make sure that you have a cost record for inventory is especially if you're doing perpetual inventory, is a big part of that is you need to be bringing items in. You need to be able to receive items, and receiving is all driven off the cost record of an item. So you can see here, this is the grid layout in Thriversa, where I can see this is my vendor ID that I get this is my base cost. So, and this is all the information that I would need to be able to receive inventory into my store, because you need to make sure you're adding and subtracting for perpetual inventory. Not so much important with periodic if you're only doing periodic counts, but it is the one other part that is important is I'm going to pull up the table format just so you can see them both kind of laid out side by side. So this is on the cost table is actually where your inventory number lives. So right here, I have on this item, I have an inventory value of 0. I'm going to go down a little bit because I have some more inventory and some items down here. So that is where you, if you're looking to track your inventory count number, you can see that on your cost record. That is where it resides. So you really need to have the cost record, especially for perpetual. But if you do want to be checking the inventory numbers outside of just counting, you need to have a cost record to be able to visually see the inventory number. And then the other reason why, like, is if you are doing periodic inventory now and you're thinking about doing perpetual inventory, so you're wanting to have that live count, adding in cost records now would get you prepared to be able to do perpetual inventory later, because that way you'll have the cost record so you can start doing your receiving to be adding the inventory in, and you can start making sure you have those processes in place to make sure your team is aware of what to do for receiving. And then you can then implement it. Okay, we're going to go from periodic inventory to perpetual inventory. We would help you with that. We would just switch the way that your inventory is running, do a 0 count, and then do a count to start off fresh with the fresh count, and then you could do perpetual going forward. But it's a best practice really to make sure you have cost records tied to items if they're items you want to be tracking inventory on. So outside of that, of course, is how do you do inventory counts in either of those, and how do you make any changes to these inventory numbers outside of obviously receiving will automatically add and selling will subtract. So that's where the inventory module is going to come into play. So the inventory module is right here. If you have been using Triversa and you don't see this, you may just be in the wrong module. So the module for anything inventory related is going to be under the buy module. If you click on the lock logo, it's going to bring up all the different modules available. So you can see right here, I have care, batch, buy, sell, manage, and system. And you're going to want to go ahead and pick buy, and that will bring you to the buy module. A lot of the ways that we normally set this up is the manage is the main hub for the other things that you can do in Triversa. It's where you can do your financials and some of the like balancing pickups. So if you just need to switch from manage, you can just click on buy. If you're not sure, up here where on your website browser up here, you're wanting to make sure that this right after here you have eSuite/buy. That will also get you into the buy module. So over here, now that you're in the buy module, and you're going to have the inventory drop down, and the two main documents that we use are inventory adjustment and inventory counts. So I'm going to go through the count first. So the count would be the ability to do count. So if you're going to be doing periodic inventory, and this would be really all you're doing, is you just can come in here and do periodic counts. If you are doing perpetual inventory, you can come in here and periodically you may want to do a count just to make sure that your inventory numbers are correct, just to double check that. So this will be where you can do that. A count is always going to overwrite the existing value. So if you have a count of 20 and you enter an account of 5, your new count will be 5. If you have a count of 8 and you do a count of 20, your new count will be 20. So it overwrites the existing count. There is the ability to be able to do that outside of the system, or to create a count sheet. So if you want to have multiple people go out and start counting, and maybe you don't have enough handheld, so you want to get like a whole sub-department counted in one day, you need more people out there working on that and counting the items for you, you can do down here, it's what's called a count sheet. And you can come in and you can run this by sub-department, by category, or by vendor. And once you decide which one you're going to be counting, you go ahead and click on that. And then you can also add some more criteria if you would like. So I did sub-department, but I could just do sub-department in certain categories, family codes, report codes, vendor ID. So if you need to do like just items by one vendor in one sub-department, this would be how you can do that. So you have a lot of flexibility on what items you can pull up on the sheet. You also have the ability to remove if you don't want to see items that are marked not for sale or have been discontinued because the vendor is no longer sending it to you. or they have no inventory, you can disregard all of these to remove them from the count sheet. You can also have this flag to have items with no count. So if you have a lot of people out there doing counts, somebody's doing it with the handheld, you want to make sure that somebody doesn't count it on paper and on the handheld, you can remove that. However, if you print it and they do a count afterwards, it obviously won't be in effect here. The other piece that they've added that's added a layer of flexibility that a lot of people have appreciated is you can normalize the field by either UPC number, vendor code, or alternate code. So it gives you, if you wanting to show, I'll run the report in a moment so you can see what I'm talking about, but if you're not wanting to show just the UPC number, if you have a vendor coming in that wants to count, they want to see their vendor number, you can do that instead. So I'm just going to go ahead and execute this. And it's just a report that you can now print and hand to multiple people. So I left it open-ended, so I have all my items in here. So you can see you have over here, you have your current count, and then they can hand count in. It's got multiple spaces available. So if they want to count by units, then by case, they could put a unit count and a case count, whatever you want to have in this field. And you can print multiples of this and have this sent out to however many people you want to have counting. I'm in a lab environment, so I don't have a lot of items, but if you have thousands of items in one sub-department, you want counted in one day, this is really a good way to get a lot of people counting at the same time. So I did by UPC number, but if I'm going to go ahead and do by vendor code just so you can see the difference. And you can see here, instead of the UPC number, and now have the vendor code. So again, like I said, if you do have a vendor coming in, that's how they refer to the items, that's how they scan the items maybe, you can do that for them and makes it nice and easy for them to be able to count their items. So that's great for a hand count, but if now you want to have those counts entered into your system. So that would be when you're going to come right back to where we were. So up at the top, and we're going to create a count document. So I'm going to go over to create a new document, and it's going to populate with today's date. If you are doing a count in the system and you want to sort it by vendor and subdepartment, you can do that. You can click on a certain vendor and or a certain subdepartment. They will stack. And then you create your document. And now I have the ability to add items into the document. So all of this was grayed out before. Now I can go ahead and click on these. I'm in my multi-count 124, and I can start adding items into my count sheet. I can also, once I have some items, I can look at the header, look at the totals. I can also do a zero inventory. So this is something that we do suggest as a best practice, is that if you are going to be doing an inventory count and you want a clean slate, you don't want to have all your old inventory numbers. Maybe you weren't tracking inventory numbers before. Maybe you're only doing a periodic inventory count. So some of your items may have counts that are like huge negatives, and you don't want to have those show as variances. You can do what we call a zero inventory. So it'll create a zero inventory count sheet and zero out all the inventory, and then you could go ahead and start your fresh count on top of that. So they've added, they've always had the ability to do this. This is available in SMS. I shouldn't say that, but they have this button that makes it a little bit easier to go ahead and zero out the inventory. When you click on it, it does make you read this. So it says, are you sure you wanted to zero the inventory for all items? Type yes to confirm, and you would have to physically type the word yes to confirm. And then hit enter. It'll create the zero count document that you would then close to zero out all your inventory. And I'll show you how to close an actual count document. It's all the same. I have all my items, since I didn't do anything, I didn't put it by certain subdepartment or by a vendor. So it's having me physically type the word yes. That prompt may change if you only are doing one subdepartment or one vendor. So it really makes sure that you read it. So you have to type the word yes, or you may have to type in 1 for yes and 2 for no. So it's really careful about making sure that you're reading it, and you really want to zero out your inventory. But for a normal inventory count, you would just usually come up under items, and you could then scan in the codes or type in the codes. You can, as you can see, there's a variety of different ways you can add an item into the document. You can do item code, description, vendor ID, subdepartment ID, which we could sort by. You can also have some more layers of criteria where you can do family code, category code, report code, all of those. And these will all stack. So if you wanted to do a specific subdepartment by brand that you just want to count in the sheet, you can stack those up. And then of course you can always type in your UPC code. If you don't want to have to go through and add in each individual code, if we go back to the start, so I'm still in the document, you can come over here and you can click, instead of items, which is a search, you can click all, which will bring up all the items that match the criteria. So I left this open-ended. I didn't say subdepartment or vendor when I created the document. So if I click on all, it's going to give me all the items that I can do a count on. And I can then start entering in my counts. So the nice thing about this is if you are familiar with Triversa, you can, this has all the same functionalities that you have with the reporting. You can move all of these columns. You can add and subtract any of them. So if you don't want to, if brand isn't something you need to see, you can come in here, remove brand and remove size description. If you're wanting to move your perpetual inventory to the beginning, so that way you can see your starting count before you do a new count, you can do that. You can get rid of the amount and the weight if that's not something you need to see. You can really make this custom to what you would like to see on the screen. You can also sort. So I showed you with the inventory count sheet that you can use vendor code, UPC, and all of that. But you want to match up the count sheets to be able to enter them in the system easily. You can also come up here. So if you did it by UPC code, you can come up and you can, it's sorted by UPC by default, but you can sort ascending or descending by UPC code. You're like, oh, well, I have the vendor. They did it by vendor code. Vendor code isn't out here. So I can come in here and I can go under columns and I can go into my cost and I can add the vendor code and then I can sort by that one. So I can sort ascending and descending by that to make it easier to enter the counts, however works best for you. So as soon as you have them up there, then you can go ahead and start adding your counts. Anything with a little divot in the corner, a little triangle corner, is an editable field. So this is where you're going to want to go through. This is where you're going to enter your counts. You can enter it by quantity, unit, cases, or weight, depending on the item. So down here, I can come down, and so my current inventory right here is my perpetual inventory units is 20, and I just counted 18. You just saw that when I entered in the count. It does take a second. It enters it into the document. It can gray out for a second and it comes up with a bunch of little pop-ups. You don't have to clear those out. They will clear out on their own. But if that's not working for you because you want to put a whole bunch of counts in at once, what you can do instead is you can click in the field. So for my bag tax fee, I have 50, but I counted 55. And instead of hitting enter, which is what I did, you can use your arrow keys or your tab keys to move up and down to the different fields. So that way you can just go right down the list and enter in your count. So I have 20 of these, I have 10 of these, go down to some of these where I actually have a count. So my vinegar chips, I had 12 according to my system, and I actually have 14 when I counted. And then once you enter all your counts, you can then hit enter after the last count. And it will, let me just put one more count in. So I'm going to 11 of these, and it will take all of those and put them on the document all in one go. So you don't have to do that. Wait for that little pause right there. As you're going through, you can scroll over. Again, all of this can be customized. All of this, you can choose how you would like to have this layout look for you. So what makes sense to you? So you can see all the way over here, I'm getting my count that I entered and what my final count would be. Like I said, a count's going to overwrite the value. So it's 18, 55, 10. Those are the values I entered. My perpetual inventory, again, we can move them around. I did move it over, so it was over here. So it was 20, it's 18. So my new count's 18, which is a variance of -2. This isn't clear to you, then what you can do down here is there's a count button. And that's going to pop open this window right here, and it's going to show it to you in a table format. So this way, instead of having to scroll back and forth or customize the view, you can come in here, we'll select this item right here. So I had 50, I had my old count, my perpetual inventory count was 50. I counted 55, my variance is 5. And my new count is 55 because the count overwrites. And you can go through and you can see down here what your previous, your variable, all of that information is pretty clearly defined here. And you can go through and enter them right here. This works just as well. It'll update. This is, hold on, let me just squeeze this over. So I can have both screens up. I have 2 screens. I like to go across the 2 screens so I can have a lot of room to open things. But you can easily come through and you can change your counts right here. So if I'm wanting to add a count for this item right here, you can add a count, and either place works. So it gives you some flexibility with those options. Once you're done, right here, this little current transaction is going to kind of give you a little glimpse of what you have added. So you have your count of what you've added and your list of items that you've added. And you can come up under here, you can click the 3 lines and you could do a few things. You can edit the line, which will just let you edit the line here that we just pulled up. You can edit the header, which is just your document header. So the document number, if you want to add like any additional information, this is that information I input at the beginning. You can show your lines, which will just show you the items that are in the transaction. So that these are only the items that are in the transaction instead of all the items that you could add. You can just look at your totals. So this will just show you the totals of how much you have in that document. You can print the document. So this will always give you a print preview. So you can print this out. So that way you have this record before you apply the counts. And then you can also suspend the document, close the document, or cancel the document. Suspending the document will leave it in an open state that you can come back later and add more items. We do recommend, best practice is that making sure that you're closing a count document on the same day that you are opening the document. The reason being is that, and when I go into the adjustments, it's the same thing, is that inventory documents are date driven. So if I open this document today, which is the 19th, and I suspend it, so it's still open, haven't closed it, you can still go back and add items into it. If somebody comes in tomorrow on the 20th and they add more items to it and suspend it again, then somebody comes in on the 21st and they add more items and then they decide to close it. They added more counts in it and they closed it. All of the counts that were entered on the 20th and the 21st, regardless of the fact that they were entered on those dates, will go back and be in effect on the date that the document opened, which is today. So you could have sold items since today. You could have received that item in since today, and it doesn't matter because the document start date was today. It's going to go back and put those inventory numbers into effect as of today. So it can throw your counts off if you're not trying to keep on top of making sure that you're closing these documents on the same day that you're opening them. Best practice, at least the next day. It'd be the latest I would say you really want to be closing a document. Closing the document, this is when the inventory numbers will go into effect. And then canceling the document, I was just showing you how to do this, or you were training a worker on how to make inventory documents. You can cancel the document so that way it doesn't affect your inventory numbers. I'm going to go ahead and close my document. I'm in my lab. It's going to come up and say confirm, close the document. You're just going to say yes. And then it's closed and you can see I'm out of that document. Everything's grayed out again. If I want to start a new one, I would have to start a new document. The other main inventory document is the adjustment document. So that's right above where we were with counts. It's an adjustment document. The difference between a count and an adjustment is going to adjust your current inventory number. It's not going, so like I said before, if I have 20 items that my perpetual inventory is showing, and I do an adjustment of 5, then my new number is 15. Not with a count where if it was 20 and I did a count of 5, my new count is 5. It overwrites it. The adjustments is exactly what it says. It's going to adjust it. This is necessary for perpetual inventory. This is not something if you're doing periodic inventory you need to worry about, so that you can account for spoilage, you can account for breakage or refunds and returns. You can also do a positive adjustment if you are adding inventory into the system, maybe breaking apart a 6-pack of soda so you can sell them individually, something like that. This would be something that you could actually do a positive adjustment. So it works the same way. You're going to come up here, you're going to create a new document. It's going to come up and automatically populate. You're going to click create, automatically populate the date, and then click create. And then you can go ahead and add items. So for this one, this is a little bit more, like I said, with the count, you can click all based off your criteria. So you can go through and quickly do a count. With the adjustment, you're going to have specific items that you're going to scan in. So you're likely going to go into the items, which is going to give you that search. So you can search by item code, description, vendor ID, custom subdepartment ID. There is more criteria, department, family code, whatever it is that you're looking to add in. And you can go ahead and create your adjustment. Since I'm in my lab, I'm just going to go ahead and click all so I can make sure I have some items to show you how to do this. Again, all of this is customized that we have up on here. You can add and subtract the columns. If you're looking for some more information on like how to navigate with inside Traversa, we did this in February and March of this year, those webinars. And I go a lot more into detail about all the flexibility that you have, but just you can always add, subtract, and move all these columns all around in whatever way best makes sense. And then you can also save that criteria so that you can reuse it later. But for this purpose, like I said, we're just going to go through and highlight what the inventory can do differently. So over here, again, you have the little triangles in the corners, and this would be where you can see the adjustments that you can make. So like over here, you have your perpetual inventory. You can see some of these numbers have changed based on the counts that I just did. And you can easily come in here now. And if you're like, well, we just had 2 people just drop Pepsis in the middle of the aisle, they went everywhere. So you can come in here and do a 2. Enter again, you can see it does that little pause where it grays out, it adds it to the document. You can scroll over now and you can see that my adjustment is 2. And then you can come over here and see what the case cost is and all that additional information. Or you can also use the adjust button down here and you can see it a little bit more clearly. So right here, I have the adjustment of I'm going to be doing another adjustment right here, my demo bag. So I have 55 count and I just wasted 10 of them. You can see here my adjustment is 10, my variance is 10, my old count is 55, and my new count is 45. This is what I meant by it's an adjustment, so it's going to adjust the count. So by default, it's negative. So there's the reason codes down here. You do have to hit the adjust button to have this pop up to change the reason code. But by default, it's always going to be 8610, which is adjustment negative wasted. There is a positive and adjustment positive splits. And then you can also have a other adjustment, which we can then use for any other additional codes that you would like to use. So if you wanted to add not just wasted, but maybe you want to have it when out of date, maybe you have it when it's got dropped, anything like that that you would like to have additional in here, it has that open ability that we could add a lot more in for you. You can also, when you're going through here, you can go ahead and use the keys, the down up arrow keys, like I was doing with the inventory count sheet. So you can do that instead of having it gray out. Once you're done, the same idea falls over here, where you can look at the line that you're currently on. You can adjust the header. You can just show the lines of what's in the document. You can show the totals. This one I feel is pretty important when you're doing adjustments, so that way you can see what you are losing out on when you're losing out on that. Not that you're losing, but that's how much you've lost in dollar amounts and in units when you are doing the adjustments, can keep track of that. And you can also print the document, which I'll show you right here. So that way you can print this out. So you can really keep kind of, see exactly, it's going to show you the lines, and it's going to show you that total of everything that you are wasting or adjusting. And then you can come down here and you can suspend and close and cancel the documents. And this is the same behavior as with the count. So if you are suspending the document, it does leave it open that you can then go back in and add items later. Best practice is to make sure that you're closing this by day. I would not suggest, again, going out more than a day or so, just because it is date driven. So if you put a count or an adjustment in tomorrow or the next day, and it's on this document, it will go into effect on the 19th. Closing the documents is when it will affect your inventory numbers, and canceling the document would be, I just did this on accident. I don't want this to go into effect. I was training somebody, so I want to cancel the document. I'm just going to close the document so you can see it does pop up with a confirm. Just want to confirm that you closed the document. Some other pieces I just did want to go over real quickly here at the end is what you can do with those inventory numbers now that you're tracking them. And there's some reports available in eSuite or Traversa. I apologize if I call it eSuite. They did change the name, so I got very used to calling it one thing. So over here, the reports in Traversa live under dimensions, and the inventory reports are under departments and subdepartments. That's what tracks inventory. They're also under items. So under departments, I have my inventory movement and my inventory value. You also have those under my sub-department, the same exact ones, inventory movement and inventory value. And under items, going back, sorry, because I had the cost open. I also have under the items, under the item master, I have the cost of goods, movement by store, inventory movement, inventory value, inventory history. So that's where all of the inventory reports that you can run. The idea with Triversa is that it tried to group everything together. So if you're going into departments for maintenance, then this would also be where you want to run your report. Same thing with sub-departments, same thing with items. So that way you are looking for the report based off of what you would like to run the report on. So we'll just go up and look at it by sub-department because that's a common one. So the inventory movement report is going to show you your inventory movement. So this is more useful for perpetual inventory. So you can see items as they're moving in and out of the store. So I'm just going to click on inventory movement. You can pick your date range, so you can look at the movement based off of a date range. You have a lot of different criteria you can stack this by. So if you wanted to do just departments, a department ID, stop and start, sub-department ID, stop and start. If you want to have one department code and the sub-departments in that department code, you can run it off of that. And you can also come down here and you can do show only items that have inventory and show a difference between calculated and current. So you can decide what flexibility you would like to do with this. The breakdown by store is if you're doing this in a host environment. So if you're wanting to get a breakdown by store, I'm just going to leave this open-ended so you can see what it looks like. So right here, this is my breakdown by sub-department. So I had 182 in this sub-department and I had a positive adjustment of 6 and a negative adjustment of 10. And that left me with an ending value of 178. And then you can go down and you can see all the different ones down here. So you have positive adjustments and negative adjustments. Now I did a lot of counts today. So that's why you're going to see a lot of adjustments. I hadn't done any purchasing. I haven't brought in any receiving. That number would be here as a positive. And then sales would be a negative right here. So that way you can really track the flow of how these are going through. And then over here at the end, if you scroll over, you can get an idea of the current and of how much you have currently on hand, any differences that you're seeing that aren't lining up, aren't adding up, and you can go address those. The other report that you have available for all of these sub-department, department, and items is the inventory value report. And this is useful for both for perpetual and periodic. So if you go into your inventory value report, you can pick what day you want to look at your inventory value. So if you're doing periodic inventory and you're wanting to see like that day, what you have at the value of inventory that you would want to run at the same day that you're doing. So you can go ahead and pick today's date. Again, you have all this criteria where you can pick department ID, sub-department ID. It is by sub-department by default since we're in inventory. And you can have those down here. And this is where you can click to go ahead and include those periodic counts. So if you're doing periodic inventory. And when you execute this, just so you can see what the report shows you right here. So you can see your quantity. You can see what you have quantity-wise on hand by case, by unit. You can also see what the cost is. So the average cost is 187. So that's giving you a value of 332 at average cost, at database cost. And then what you have on hand. And this is really showing what you have on hand in value. So this is what you have on hand by value of cost and what you have in hand and value by retail. So you can really start kind of going down and looking into that information and digging into it to see, well, first off, you can look at what your margins are here. So you can say, well, my database cost is, I have it at this, and my retail cost, this is how much money I'm making, which is one good thing to check. But you can really see, are you sitting on too much inventory by value, by unit, anything like that? Do you need to think about moving something? Do you need more? And again, like I said, I'm showing you sub-department. You can run this by department. You can run this by items. So you can really drill down into those analytics and see what it is that you have that you may need to be moving, look at a sale, maybe if you have too much of it sitting there, and anything like that. Or if you're doing a purchase order, how much should you order? There is a few other reports that exist under the items. So if I go under my items master, you see the inventory movement and inventory value. There's an inventory history that is only by item. So I'm going to just run this. So always have all that criteria Some additional criteria that's nice when you're running it by item. Anytime you're running a report by item, it has up here, it says any code, any description. So you can type in a partial UPC code or a partial description, which is nice. But I'm just going to go ahead and run this by day so that way you can see what it looks like. So I can see what my previous inventory was and what my current inventory was, and I can see the history of it. So like I said, I was going through, I did a lot of counts I had some negatives in my lab, so I was getting them up to a positive. So you can see what my previous inventory, now my current perpetual inventory is, to kind of see what's going on. There is some additional columns you can add in here if you would like. So if you're looking to see like date, store, description, anything like that, you can go ahead and add them in here. Brand, I know I took away brand and now I'm putting it back, but you can come in here and add all that information in here to get more detail. So it's a really nice, a nice feature and a nice ability to be able to come in here and really see what is going on in the store, what's moving in the store, and where it was moved. So right here, you can see down here, that's what I was looking for, is these were my adjustments. You can actually see the adjustments that I've done, and you can see how they were negative adjustments, and then my previous inventory, my current inventory, and you can start getting very big details on what historically this inventory has been. Is it maybe an item that you're constantly having to make adjustments on because people are breaking it? Maybe you should move it to a safer place, something like that. Before I hand this back over, one piece that I just wanted to bring up with all of these reports that I'm showing is you do have the ability to print this report. It's right here. And these all have the ability to export to Excel very easily if that's something you prefer. Click of a button up here, you just say what columns you would like to, and it will export out into Excel. So with that, Nicola, did we have any questions come in?
We did indeed. So we'll hit it straight off with the first question. How do you receive by case and sell by unit?
So when you are receiving by case and selling by unit, so I'm going to go back into my item master. I'm just going to go right back into my cost table really quick. So when you're coming in and you're receiving by case, so you can see right here, I have 12 units that are in a case when you're setting up your cost record. So when I receive one case in, it's going to add however many units I have in this field to my inventory. Okay. So you are going to be setting that, and I'll pull up the table just in case you're used to this in an SMS Pro as well, so you can see it, because the tables really look like what it looks like in Pro. So I have 12, when I put that 12 in here, it's saying I have 12 units in a case. So when I receive one case, it'll add 12 units.
Okay, great. So we'll move on to the next question. When you override the count, is there a record created for the difference somewhere?
Yes, so it'll come up as in the inventory history, when you're looking at that, it'll come up in there as the difference. I do suggest right here, so I'm going to go right back here. So it's an inventory difference. It's this totalizer 8801. So it's an inventory difference of -2. So when you do the count, or down here, let me pick a different item because I apparently did an adjustment and a waste of the same number. So this is a little bit clearer right here. So I only did a count on this item. So I did a count and the difference was 20 when I did the count. So it is tracked by this totalizer 8801, and you can view it in the inventory history movement report.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jen. So next, Rich has a series of different questions, basically around the same thing. He's wondering about Triversa. Is this a new application that we're being used? I think you did mention at one point something around this, but he also goes on to say, why is this? Is there any reason why this application is being used versus SMS v.350? And then how does he get Triversa in his store?
Okay, so first off, Triversa is new. It is something that we are starting to roll out in addition to V3 and into the V3, the SMS and SMS Pro applications. The reason why is that this is the direction that Lock is moving in with the newer versions, is that they're rolling this out. And this is going to eventually take over for SMS and SMS Pro. So that we are bringing this out we are offering this out to anybody who is interested. You could contact your salesperson, and something we just would go in, we install it on your system. It's a very light install because if you're noticing, this is actually web browser based. So you actually really just need the ability to access it. Is what we install, and then the web browser to be able to access it. The reason why they're moving, and I'm sorry, I forgot part of the question. Could you?
No, you were going in the right direction,
okay.
definitely.
Okay.
But the reason why the application is being used versus yes.
The reason why this application is being moved is used more. They're moving in this direction. It's much more flexible to be able to, for you, the user. So a lot of times, like we get this question on, I know on our support team and on the technical team that I'm on, that, we want to customize a report. We want to customize our views, and we are, like making custom reports. Instead of having to do that, you have the ability to customize it yourself and be able to allow different people in your system to be able to have their own views. It's very simple to set those up and you to control them. And it also is very very flexible, like I said, you can, like the cost record. Some people prefer the table view, some people use Excel. So they're really moving to that. So that way you have somebody who really works well with this, you have somebody who really works well with that. You don't have to compromise, you could use either or. And then the other reason why is that SMS is a program based. So you have to rely on the fact that there's a program installed. And if you want to use SMS or SMS Pro, you have to be in front of a machine that has one of those programs installed. With Traversa, you don't need to have the program installed. You simply need a web browser. You do need to be on the network of your server for security purposes, unless you have a networking company that can allow a bridge to be able to, or VPN access to be able to get in there. You can do that as well. But it really, like, you can come in with your laptop, open up Google Chrome, type in the web address of your server and the additional little bit information up here and have access. You still need a username and password. And like I said, you still need to be on your own network, but it makes it a lot easier for multiple people to be able to use it and not have to worry about having a program.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jen. So now we have a very specific question. How do I record the adjustment for fat trimmed off of beef in the butcher shop?
What I would do for that is I would come up with my own reason code for that. You could come up with it, instead of doing adjustment wasted, you could do your own adjustment. That way you could track it separately so it doesn't get lumped in with everything, so that we can just create, like I said, that other adjustment. And then you would just take the weight of that fat trim. And when you're doing the adjustment, I know I did a lot of the adjustments. I'll just create a new document really quick. There we go. As you can do it by weight. So if you go ahead and take the fat and you can weigh it. I know this isn't a weighable item. We'll do bananas, at least it's weighable. So you can take that fat and you can weigh it and say it's 5 pounds, 2 pounds, or 2.5 pounds. You can come in here and do an adjustment of that right here. And it would take that adjustment of 2.5 pounds and take it out of that.
Brilliant. So, thank you. Oh, yeah. There was more. Carry on.
No, so I was just going to say, I did focus on that. Like I said, I did focus on the quantity, but that's a great question. So yes, as long as you are tracking it by weight, then you would just take that, weigh it, and then you could put it in this adjustment so that way it's adjusted out. But I would just say best idea for that would be to make its own reason code. So that way it's not just being lumped in with other things, like something specific, so you can track what's being in and out.
And I think that actually even answers the next question. They mentioned, the same person mentions, I believe it's the same person, the use of, I see a weight column in the inventory history report. How do we proprietary inventory by weight? So there we go.
Yep. And it's available in the count for weight as well. So yeah, it's available all there.
Okay, fantastic. There is no more questions. That was brilliant. 7 questions in total. Thank you, everybody. And thank you all for attending. And thank you, Jen, for a fantastic presentation as always.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And please watch out, everybody, for the next invitation for in the coming year, and have a lovely holiday.